October the 28th, 2024, and 17 years after PlanetCom, we are last doing a remake of Cohnirri Space, or for the first time ever, a Cohnirri Space, Cohnirri Starship Locations story. So, we're last starting to film this. So this is the opening scene in the teaser. It looks like the 2380s stories go up to roughly 160 pages. So that's the first movie, basically. So if we get to that point, the end of this 2480s, then that's the first movie. Pilot, basically. With the Starcrackers, it's the same idea, but smaller. So here we are, the set. There's Gynet, Silerat, and Havid. These two are in the same shot. That one is not. We will see what happens. This scene has been changed from the script. We don't see what they're looking at. That's in post. If we see it at all, it's supposed to be a nod to the Voyager space probe. That makes no sense. That wouldn't be in the Centauri system. Also, it's a different universe, kind of. And also, it couldn't be the Voyager Starship. That wouldn't make sense either. So it's probably a starship that they're looking at on a monitor of some kind. So yeah, so that's that. Let us begin without much extra, any fluff at all. Let's begin. So, yeah. Yeah, Silerat is the one that leaves. So it's the other guy. Okay, so let's. Hold on. Yeah, so oh, behind the scenes. We just finished the teaser of Cohnirri Space. Teaser, the remake Cohnirri Space. Kind of gives us a little hint as to where Cohnirri Space's 2480s universe takes place. It appears to be a parallel, like, timeline type of thing, and to the other ones. And the setup, we get to see an intact original Starship Chimera that they have gotten a hold of instead of the Voyager, which is interesting because I thought the Chimera was destroyed. Now in the Chimera A. So this story is not. It's not that it's an earlier story and we're going back to 2388 at all. It's that in the 2390s. It's that this alien race found the Chimera adrift and apparently put it back together. That's probably what happened, which is interesting. That's probably what happened. Or it's a parallel universe where that Chimera wasn't destroyed and made first contact with these two planets. I think they just scanned it and rebuilt it is what happened. That's probably what happened. Now we're not sure. It's kind of silly, and we know that from hints that the Matthews character's cousin, the other Matthews, is the one that was the Cillian that zapped the ship in the 2390s, but we don't know. We know it was destroyed and the crew evacuated, but we don't know if it was completely destroyed or just scuttled into the Cillian universe rift thing or whatever. So now, the ship's sitting there. And there, I don't know if it creates a paradox, but it is a way of presenting this as, oh, this is sometime after the events of the other story. It was almost going to be the Legacy or the Esteban, but I think no, let's make it the Chimera, the first one. One of the first Chimeras. That way it's like, oh, this timeline is just a little different. Little different Earth, a little different Chimera. It's Star Trek, clearly. And it always kind of was. In the DNA of the story, Space the Final Frontier and all that. So yeah, it always kind of was. So this is Kal Kat. The Kal Kat are little behind the scenes here. A production has started on we did the teaser involving aliens, the three aliens on the planet. Just thought I would chime in. Came up with a way around the other story showing the older ship. It still works in the concept of the story, because then you can imply that, like, okay, the ship could be from either the 2390s, it got left behind and abandoned and they found it. That makes sense. Or it's a paradox and that it's from later. This other universe is slightly different or something. It's not necessary. It's a gag, so it's not necessary. I don't think the ship ever comes up again, or the Voyager, or whatever the ship. In the next scene, they encounter Alan Slayton, director of the Space Forces, who is Michael Slayton's father. There's a lot of generational things going on here. Commander of the California, which is funny. It's a Kal class ship. That'd be kind of weird. Yeah. So that would be Star Trek as well. Although it would be a different ship, because in the novel, originally it was a mile long and the size of the SDF-1. Which is way too big. The Kalen's way too big as well. Like 40 miles long. Way too big. Everything is way too big. So scaling that back. Just, making this more of a Star Trek. And it originally was, as I was over during the making of the storybook versions, developed this for the screen, getting to do a scene from the Brown novel as the Distant Destinies Cohnirri space novel, Redemption of the Kalen, as an actual scene is thrilling enough to do that, even if it was a little contrived, a little Star Trekky. But yeah, they're ancient aliens and they're doing their thing. But they're not the alleged, yeah, like silly version where they built pyramids or something. No, they didn't do that. It's not like that. But they're basically Martians that have been transported. They originally had bases in orbit of Mars, and they left Mars a long time ago. So they're Martians. To go to the Centauri system. A superior officer kind of thing. I think their society is apparently computer-driven, so it's probably like any number of those classic Trek planets that they visited. Although it's not in the story anywhere, and the ship probably doesn't come up again ever, the ship, that other Chimera, is probably a ship that visited them, and them being imitators, they rebuilt it. Either the ship fought in a battle near them, and they took the pieces of the ship home and put it back together as best they could. Like these guys apparently, yeah, they rebuilt the Chimera to look just like the Chimera was in the movie, which is a fun nod and a gag. But yes, this story is supposed to take place two generations after the events of Legacy. We don't know what happened to them, but there were some hints about that in the other stories, and we didn't even know what it would look like yet. The 2483 story, and there are slightly over 300 pages dealing with the 86, the rest of season 1, basically. And I think that if you do this tight enough, this is for your first fan film movie, season 1, 83, and the second one, 86. And then you're done, and then go and do Chimera. 2 movies for episode 41 there. 2 Cohnirri movies. Oh, there was one scene omitted. This is making up, of course. There was a scene where Gynat goes to, or Gynat goes to the space depot and flies off in a ship for about a page. I thought that was unnecessary in this story visually, because you want to tell the narrative that the other guy's leaving and he's going to be out there. Otherwise, you don't need. He's going to catch up to him later when he finds the Kalen, but yeah, then he ends up on that ship. But then in the Star System. But yes, we meet the aliens before we meet the humans in that context. But no, technically we meet the humans and the California ship next. And a story change, it's going to be the San Jose. Yes. Some of their own original stuff, but in some ways they copied Starfleet. They clearly were cross-contaminated by Starfleet and a visit from a starship a couple of times, and it changed their society. They could be the android synths and the crew from that bioship that have been since explored, or that bioship could have been headed to Kal Kat instead. It's actually the other planet. It's probably this planet, though. This future Earth is probably this planet. Okay, starting this late because of other things that came up here on the 29th. Starting production on the scene where the alien meets the Space Forces commander on the ship, the California. In the rewrite, it's called the San Jose. That's the name of the ship. It's a California class ship, but yes, California 2 class ship. So this is clearly connected to some version of Starfleet on this planet. We still call it California. That's fine. Yeah, it's the model is the San Jose. So here we have the alien, Silorat, who has come to Earth. We'll pronounce it Siloret just to avoid confusion. Yeah. So let's film this, and not going to be any fluff between takes, and it's going to be straightforward. And we had to change in the script, but you wouldn't know. One of the aliens there to be more like a Picard. That's what Gordon Cervantes. Just because it makes more sense to flip the Picard for the other guy. Even though technically he would look more like Everett, I think it's easier to have him be this guy. So that shouldn't be a problem. You'll get to know the characters later. As we continue into 2483. But they don't actually say what year this story is, but that's what it is. Okay, so yeah, we mixed up a guy in here early in production, trying to make everything work. It's confusing because this Leo Starro guy is an exact clone of the other one. It's just weird. So David Cassins should be the Picard figure. So we changed it. He's the Picard figure. So redo the scene. It's only 2 pages. Just reshoot the whole scene. From the point where Alan says on page 8, welcome aboard the California. Just call it the California. Don't do the other stuff. Call it that. And you can go from... Okay, we're going back to the top of page 9 because I'm sure I screwed up and abused that other Scotty again. It's got to be this one. This is the one. That one's Everett. In fact, let's have Everett not be in the scene so that he can't be confused with the other one because he won't be there. All right. Okay, it took a while to worm that chapter out of that story. Characters, scenes, setup, that type of thing. And the 2 Scotties were confusing. We didn't need to know about Everett, other Scotty, yet. That messed up some things, which you won't notice when the story's together because we reshot the scene. You see, and those 3 pages toward the end there, and then they went to the end of the scene, which is kind of like a second teaser, where the alien goes to Earth, or Earth, and visits it. Their cousins. This one, the hook is that they already know and they go there immediately. So unlike Battlestar Galactica, where they're going to go across the galaxy and meet our distant cousins from Earth, our relatives, they're already there. But the alien shows up and goes, oh well, these guys, the Cohnirri guys, are your cousin. The Majestic is not necessarily the bioship from that other story. It's another one. We're presuming that the one that was encountered on the future Earth in Distant Destiny, the episode, was a different one heading for a different Earth, described as similar to Earth duplicate. They could always retcon. I think what's going on is they're not related. I think that I wrote the other one too, but I think that it's more that the other story represents another parallel Earth. I was looking into the parallel Earths of Star Trek that have pervaded the original series quite a bit. But the next generation, they would just say, oh, Earth colonies that are similar. They could get away with just going to a colony that failed or whatever, and visiting it. There are hints as to the other one. Now with the Vanguard story, you kind of have a similar solar system with a similar Centauri, similar and closer planets that are similar stars that are close by that are, it's a similar idea, as a similar Earth. So is it the same as this one? I don't think it is. I think that the Vanguard story doesn't take place on the same Earth as the Cohnirri space story, just because the places they go to are different. Colonies are spread out are different. There's the Desiree is not a devastated Mars-like planet. Desiree and the Starcraft Vanguards is Earth-like. It hasn't been devastated, and they go there, and it's Earth-like. It's Class M, Star Trek. So it's quite different. And Rebia is Rebel Terra. If this is actually Keptera and Key-Draconis fighting each other, that's at this planet, then that'd be interesting, because it kind of goes with the Numicia and Latori thing later on in Starcrackers. That would be 2 different planets from that. They're not related, I don't think. I think that other one is, in Starcrackers, it's supposed to be the original gray planet. It's supposed to be Zeta Reticuli. Those 2 planets are fighting each other. Different cousins doing different things. So there's different guys doing different things, different parallels doing different things. The Litkra and the Dargrai did something similar, but that pair of planets they're on is not Reticuli. It's very much closer. Zeta Reticuli is 40 light years away, whereas this one is Centaurus. It's only 4.5 light years away. Yeah, so it's quite a bit closer. So that's that planet. And that would make more sense that the Greys would actually come from Alpha Centauri. They'd be closer than Zeta Reticuli. Why wouldn't they be? The neighboring solar system, they came over here. That would make more sense. Yes, they're supposed to be Greys. But they also, the way the characters are painted, looks like our guest in this next story is Silarat. Looks like a sort of rat fur kind of guy with Borg stuff, that like a Borg eye and a rat eye, and kind of an interesting looking thing. It looks like a Dargray, basically rat bug, half rat hybrid thing. That creature looks like a Dargray more than a Litkra. So is he a Dargray? It's kind of interesting. I don't think he considers himself a Dargray. I think he's a citizen of Litkra that considers himself a Litkra, even though he's technically a Dargray. Doesn't really come up later at all. It does a little bit. If we get to book 2, it does a little bit. A couple days of shooting, that'll be good. We're at page 12 of the first 50 minutes, first half. There's 3 major acts that are 50 minutes long, roughly. But I think that if you film this as a story series thing, they won't be like a 3-hour movie. It'll be more like 2. If you just kind of trim things a little bit. And there already was a little bit of that. There was a setup scene where they meet on a ship over a view screen, and then they go into the meet Slayton. Why didn't he just? He's already there. Then no. He just goes there. He's already there. He's gonna meet him. Cervantes' voice took a little bit to get going correctly. David Cassins is now a Picard figure. That makes more sense, because the younger one's a Picard figure as well. I think a younger Picard figure, something like that, or it's the Doctor or something. Yeah, sure. Why not? And of course, Slayton is meant to be a LaForge figure. He just had a LaForge. They indicate in the story that it's they give the year on this particular parallel Earth indirectly by saying, that they became a united Earth in 2440. So that's about. Did I add that up right? 25 years later, yeah, because it's 2307, something like that. If it was Okay, if it was 10. If it was 2410, then it's 30 years. But it's a little more than that. So it's, yeah. Is it planet the Legacy went to at some point? Is it a planet that it's probably a planet that Chimera went to. The original Chimera during its 2388 to 2396, little over a five-year mission, six-year mission, and it probably that's the this is a planet it went to, or it was lost in this other sector, this other parallel Earth. These characters aren't supposed to be LaForge and Picard and a Shadow Dancer and a Leo Starro, but it's fun that they make an appearance, and you're like, wait a minute, is that Leo Starro from 30 years earlier? Because that'd be interesting. Is it Lion Star? Because that'd be like, what? Okay. It's not supposed to be. No. Clearly, but are the years on the planet the same as the years on Cillian Earth? Is this planet a version of Cillian Earth that post-dates the post-atomic horror of the 2060s, and it's now like, 80 years after that, and so on and so forth. Maybe not. I think it's just a parallel Earth that's been saved because the Cillian children grew up and they have the ability to do that, to be preservers and preserve a version of the Earth elsewhere with those ships and things they sent out. This is probably just another colony of one of those groups of one of those ships that went out. There's lots of those. And it found itself in a similar place in outer space in the galaxy and just founded it. Just said, okay, well, we're going to set this up and be on this solar system. It wasn't supposed to be connected originally. Cohnirri Space and is not connected to Vanguards, yes, obviously, but it's not supposed to be connected to Silly Trek either. It's just that we decided to do that. To fit in. But yeah, the Klingons and a lot of these are in the Klingon area. I think that this planet is probably, if you wanted to put it in the Cillian universe, it is probably related to that Voyager Destinations episode, in that this planet is probably related to the Draconians and them, but it's not that place specifically. It's not that colony of the Far-Oudians. It's a different one, just because it doesn't seem to be that Draconian planet, Key Draconis from that episode, or Keptera, I believe, from that episode. Key Draconis was the other one. This is Keptera. I think this is Keptera. This isn't Keptera, in other words. This is a colony that's similar to them. And there's other Cohnirri on Keptera, but similar. They have similar people. They have the Far-Oudians with a LaForge visor. They have the Picard people. So they're clearly influenced by the arrival of the Chimera A and the Emmett Till A. They're clearly influenced by that in their visit, the secondary visit. Well, so something's going on. I don't know if it ever is solved, but if it was, it would be probably disappointing. Because they'd be like, stepping into the room going, wait a minute, we're actually these guys from... No, I think that would be a cop-out. If they did that, and did the Prometheus thing. I think explained it, you guys were one of the preserver colonies who is similar to them, and they encounter them. That's probably what's going on here. It's a similar Earth, parallel Earth, similar but different things happen. They became united in 2440 instead of earlier in 2161, for instance. They're clearly not Starfleet. It's clearly not a Starfleet planet. It's a colony of some kind. A recent colony of some kind. Okay, Halloween Eve, afternoon, and a little bit of this, and there's already been some going through the story. Decision here is that it's that date. The dates are actually not that spread apart in this version. It's 2383. That's what it is, not 82. 2383, and it's not that important what the date is. That's when it's 2483 is what it is. But it's inconsistent in the story. 2483, and the later stuff that was 2486 is 2483. So we're just trying to, this is another introduction. This is what happened to Guynat, the other alien. And there was a scene where he gets off a shuttlecraft and it docks and lands, and there's some dialogue about an attack on the other queen of the planet. But all that would be is exposition that probably would get on the cutting room floor and cut out. So, yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this part and that part, this part, and the other part together with the other one missing. So the captain guy that's turned to them implies that they've already found Guynat and brought him aboard the Kaleen. So that's what this is going to be. So Halloween night, Halloween Eve here, afternoon. There's about, I filmed about 50 minutes of footage on the set of, I think it's been like a day and a half. And we did the scene where they go through the hypercorridor and they come out. There's another hint as to what was going on, how old the ship is, that type of thing. Apparently the Kaleen itself was launched about 100 years earlier. And as the story takes place in 2483, that'd be about the time of Star Trek Lower Decks. So, that should know. When the ship was launched. If their timing, if their years are the same as our years, which would be really weird if they were, but just for the clarity's sake, because star dates are weird anyway. Sure. So this is, 100 years after that. And you'd think the star date thing would have changed as well, but they didn't, apparently. So it's a Earth-like planet. There's a synth, apparently a data like a synth, and it's a Cohnirri, which is interesting. It's a data, but yeah, okay, but yeah, and that kind of thing. Yunsal is a Worf, done up as now he's called Orange Claw. We have a number of other guys. So we have Djalis there, who is probably supposed to be the other guy, but I'm just saying he's Djalis, just because he looks cool. He's not in it as much as the other guy, so we're gonna say Pura is also like his brother or something. Probably that's going to happen because there aren't that many aliens to throw into the story. So you have a whole... Yeah, it's not really important where they came from necessarily. The who, what, when, where, why, the backstory. The world building is there anyway. It kind of establishes itself. And you don't really need to go and say, like, oh, I need to explain... on this other planet, the Ark myth did what this Flood myths did this and that, and they went to the planet. That doesn't need to be in this. Just them going where they're going to get there. Action, space adventure, story, opera thing. And having our aliens meet up with the heroes later on. The older hero guys that happen to be visiting the system. Yeah, it flows. It does what it... Yeah, it's like a show. It's like it should have been a show. So it's going to be one with action figures. So that's awesome. It's also amusing that in the latest Lower Decks episode... They referred to a tiny little ship with little action figure-like people inside it, commanded by somebody that looked like Sandy Talisman from the series, commanding this little Endeavor ship. I thought that was it's a laugh out loud, chef's kiss. Great scene. In the little tiny ship with action figures. They're definitely watching our stuff over there at Lower Decks. Definitely. They might as well just come out and say, here, the Chimera shows up in the next. As well. We're the only other show that has an adult version, older versions of Tendi and Rutherford and Mariner and the others on their crew missions in the 2040s. And now this is a jump of 70-some years later to see other stuff. It doesn't mean we can't go back to them later. They're still around as action figures. But so this is cool. Space stuff, new stuff. Yeah, why not do our own stories this time instead of some other people's Transformers fanfics or something? We'll do our own fanfic. Yeah, and it really was kind of a Star Trek, in the DNA of Cohnirri space. Back in the day, we called it, when I was 14 and a half and I wrote the comic book motion comic thing and drew it up, it was called Space the Final Frontier. It's obvious what I was thinking of, and it would have predated the Next Generation even, actually. Like way before that. I do like how the interaction is going there. That Orange Claw is not exactly Worf. He's excitable, but he's snarky like Worf, but he's a little more excitable than Worf. I'd say he's more like Alexander kind of, but I'm not playing him that way. I'm trying to play him more like his own guy. He's his own character. San Akiri being religious, monotheistic of some kind. The Cohnirri being a monotheistic group from a previous incarnation. If they were Diluvian, like old Torah, Old Testament guys, sort of in that universe, then the Preservers took them and put them on the planet, wanted to preserve them, which is cool. That's right along with Star Trek. Neat. Yeah, why not? Sure, why not? That's all you need to really say. Oh yeah, that's the Preservers. That's the buzzword. The Preservers did it. Just like that Roman planet, and that weird Yang and Combe planet, and some of those other planets, the Muri planet. Anyway, yeah. So even though we are trucking along with this rapidly, we're making a few mistakes already. And so, well, it's the dailies, and the cat guy, his arm and half of his side is totally visible in the shot. It's because, well, you've got this on this little louver thing, and you can't see that the arm is in the way with the visual. So we're going to reshoot all of San Akiri's lines. I think the other lines are fine, but his lines are not. And yeah, so we'll go back to yeah, we kind of have to reshoot San Akiri's lines. I don't want to do the whole thing over, just his lines. Yeah, so wow. I'm not sure how much was shot of this. Another note with, of course, writing down the characters and how their voices sound so they're all consistent. We want to make sure that San Akiri, even though he's kind of like Lore, isn't actually like hyperactive Lore, but he's a synth, clearly. He's supposed to be like a assumed type android in this story. He isn't in the original novel, but he is here. Also, Orange Claw is a Worf action figure, but he's not Worf, he's an excited Klingon. So don't play him just like Worf, he's a cat guy. It's more like a Kzinti. So, yeah, so that's that. You don't know. So the crewman. Okay, I'm actually gonna, this is gonna be confusing. So, I wonder if we should reshoot the entire scene. Just because of the way this is blocked. We either leave this part out where he gets rescued entirely and start on 17, or yeah. So yeah, there's Skynet. I gotta go with Ledmont. Okay, I looked back at the dailies on the first scene, back to page 14, and apparently that scene, the beginning of this, basically this little chapter here, this scene, it's a chapter, it's a scene, 10 pages, but it's 10 pages that's a little wonky, and you want to get this right, so reshoot it all, because there are errors with the characters, there are errors with the alien's face gets blurry, there are a lot of other errors, so just reshoot the scene. It's only 10 pages, it's 5 minutes of dialogue, just reshoot it. That way you don't need to go back and splice things together, just say, okay, we reshot it, put everybody back where they're supposed to be, and did the scene over and over again. So, yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. So they're already implying they're already on the mothership, which is fun. And originally they weren't. They were on a other ship headed to the mothership, the Pertha. Well, the Pertha was attacked. Yeah. So in order for that was the scene. That was we had to reshoot that scene, scene 3. And yeah, because it was, yeah, I kind of had to. Yeah, so I reshot the footage from Halloween yesterday. It was about 40 minutes of footage, roughly. It was scene 3. I figured reshoot the whole thing because, yeah, trying to match like 1 or 2 characters. Some of them were blurry anyway. So I figured I'll just reshoot the scene, the whole scene. Just redo it all and then have everything better. And it looked better visually, I think. I think it looks better. It makes more sense. Some changes to some characters that you won't really see much again anyway. It's also you'll also notice that the Cooligan is Earthspark Nightshade. It's thrown in there because we're Nightshade. I decided that the last minute there that since that character probably doesn't appear in the rest of the story at all, I don't think she has any other lines or they. So yeah, it's a Transformer. Because the Cooligan were Transformers anyway. They were Transformer tree things. They didn't really look like her so much, but maybe they're owls. That'd be cool. Or like owl things. Owl thing, yeah. That'd be cool. Yeah, I don't know. Robotic things. Yeah, so they're related to the owls of Ga'Hoole. That's interesting. Star Trek bird people are kind of rare, so yeah, so she's in there. It's not supposed to be her, but it's her. Obviously. Yeah, because it's the 25th century, so yeah, reference the ship being a century old or something, and the other, and that they stole the ship 2 years after it was. They had the ship for 2 years, and in the original storybook, it has the pole star as this gigantic 25-mile long across thing. And it can't be that big. It can't even be a mile because that's ridiculous. So then why would the scout ship stand a chance of even touching it? No, it's not quite that big. Yeah, so it's not that big. It's big, but it's not that big. I won't in this version say how big it is. So assume that it's small enough to be attacked by the bad guys and large enough to be a mothership, basically. So that's kind of the idea. So could be galaxy class size, maybe a little bigger. That would make more sense. It's just a little bigger than that. Because otherwise, yeah, they do dock in the docking bay, so it'd have to be a little under a mile then in order to do that. But yeah, or maybe they don't. Maybe they dock on the outside of it. There's any number of ways you can pull it off in post. Just want to like film the story and then establish the world that it's doing, without worrying about the things that it's doing in that world. So you have I think this is it for today, though. I mean, I think started late. Again, I want to make sure that it's good. The next one is them on the ship. The Djalis and his crew have taken it over. It's also curious that if it is a miles-long vessel with a skeleton crew of refugees, then how did it get out there? A skeleton crew, like that Star Wars prequel thing that I saw. But I just watched that, and they reference Where No One Dared Go Before in there. Okay, guys, come on. Star Wars. Now Star Wars is getting in on the act and stealing lines from Star Trek and from us. So there you go. I had nothing to do with Skeleton Crew. It had nothing to do with it. But yeah, which is very Halloween-y. But now it's the 1st of November. Post her Halloween video out there, and had to reshoot the footage from Halloween because it didn't work. It just didn't work. It had all kinds of... And there's almost the errors reappearing in this footage, too, with the arm and all that stuff. It's almost back. So it's like, wow, this is just... Wow, scene 3 is just problematic. I hope that it works. Because I'd hate to have to reshoot it again. Because I hope that it works. Because, man... Wow, man, this just... It's like Deep Space Nine. When they were doing that, they were trying to be serious and stuff. And you had to make sure the voices are right because you don't want them to throw them off. Or only a few minutes in, you're only like at most 15 minutes into the story, and everything has to match, because otherwise it's gonna sound weird if they suddenly don't sound like they sounded before. Visually in the story, only story-wise, it hasn't been a week. Story-wise, it's to the watching it, it's been like a few minutes. Yeah, it's got to match the teaser. Everything's got to match. Otherwise, it's weird. There was. So we have yeah, we're going on with this on second, and we're doing this, and there is mention of a colony. Apparently, originally in the script, it was supposed to be, in the book, it was supposed to be going from Gamma Pavonis to Delta Pavonis. But in this version, it's an error in the story, which you wouldn't know, because you wouldn't know. They go to Cohnirri space in this story. This part is, they go to Atrial and Litgra and Darkrai themselves at this point. I think that's what's going on. So, so, which doesn't mean anything to the story itself, because you don't know where these world building of these different planets are. So, then they mention Centaurus and the other one, and they bring it closer. They bring the action closer to Earth. Only the doorstep of Earth, really. Because these other Pavonis stars are in the south, juxtaposed to the other ones, and so Centaurus is too. So they're coming up from below the solar system, basically below the solar system. So in order for that line to work, it needs to be Centaurus and the homeworld. So that's what I've changed. A line that you wouldn't know because you haven't actually. It hasn't been established yet, so you don't know that, but that's what happened. Another making of note. They mentioned the different light years and solar systems and star systems in here to be efficient. I don't want to do that in this version. I want to make it more Star Crackersy and just say it's vaguely somewhere close by, because otherwise there will be attempts by other people in the future to try to figure out where everything is, and then opens up a can of worms to say that this isn't really the Sol system, it's some other parallel one with closer planets. So let's just not establish that. Let's just do a story with them doing something, and not go there. So the planet, that's where they go, but not making everything definitive. So you see, unlike in Star Wars, when you had the Kessel Run in some parsecs, you just don't say, then you don't need to. Yeah, it's close by. That's all you need. So here's the so here we have another scene this evening with these two planets. It seems it's pretty quiet, and Wexkala and Meshax and Digelis Orange Claw. And do whatever you want with Wexkala, because he's just in the one story, which in the beginning. Meshax is funny. A name that sounds biblical. Anyway, but he's a bad guy in this case. So I've been looking all over for the figures, and it seems that at the last minute, the last hour during the assembly of these, that I decided that it was better to have Idal be the Aurora instead, and not have her be the Yar figures. The Yar figure is Benton again. I think that's what's going on here. So he's back to being Benton, which makes more sense. It just does. So let's do this scene with the introduction of some of the other crewmen that have been rescued. So this is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster. Bit of a time change here. Well, it's an hour later, but it says it's an hour earlier. It's a time change. So we have, finished up, basically Act 1 of a 3-act story dealing with the 2483 period. And I also went on a little ahead with the text and said when you get to Act 2, there's a whole scene involving the Slaytons on Earth in San Francisco. where they're talking about the news and stuff, and the aliens coming and stuff like that. And it didn't work in the story, and it doesn't work now. It would slow the story down. You would just get the sort of bitchy older father guy and the bitchy wife character. Basically, that's not very exciting. It's like a sitcom. It doesn't fit in the story. They're not juxtaposed to anything. She isn't technically later, doesn't appear later on anyway, really technically. There's a Jennifer Stevens later that could be her. But I think the other introduction for that other Jennifer Stevens later is a better introduction than the one in San Francisco. So I just won't include that. It's too sitcom-y. It's too funky. Oh, there's an older father guy and an upstart father, son and his wife, and it's like Everybody Loves Raymond or something. That moment in there, and we don't need that in the story. I think it slows it down to a crawl, and the only part that works is when David Cassins, as an old man, is visited by the alien. Shows up. I think it's Siler Rat. Shows up on the planet, and then he's seen briefly later. The two guys meet up on that other mission later on, and then they're killed by the bad guys at some point later on in the story. Yeah, they're not main characters in book 2, in other words, season 2, but they're around in season 1. Also, in the story, it's supposed to jump 3 years between 2383 and 2386, and show us 3 years later all this stuff happens. But if we're seeing this, if you put these pages and stories together, and you edit this in a correct serial way, this is not even 40 minutes for this act. And the next act wouldn't be 40 minutes quite either, as with the third would not be quite 45, 46 minutes. So you've got your 2283 story is basically about 2 hours, roughly, if that, 110 minutes, something, a little over 90 minutes. So yeah, I like the only comparison with the Dune movies is that there's one part and then there's one part a little later. That's the only comparison, is that the two were split up into two. They kind of have to be in this case because you kind of you don't want to make it a 4.5 hour movie out of the story for the pilot. This is the pilot. And it's also confused for there's a 25th century thing out, and it's confused for the Orville season 4. It's not the Orville season 4. It's some fan film. Stop, guys. No, it's not. This is just a fan film. It's my own thing. It has nothing to do with the Orville. So stop putting it out on the net that I know something about something that I wouldn't know about. Not for some time. So. But having done a little research, I do happen to know that I do know things from doing research, that there's a lot of rumors out there. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of rumors about that, and it has nothing to do with my stuff. So, until you hear it from the horse's mouth, until you hear it from them, going, okay, there definitely is going to be something. It's supposed to just from one of the actors. Hear it from the producer. He says, yeah, there's going to, then you know. Has nothing to do with my stuff, though. Yeah, this is actually production. This is a Cohnirri Space. This is mine. And, it is coming. It's going to, it's already November. And it'll be December release, possibly, if it's put together in time. Early December. Around the same time as I think one of the other Star Treks is coming out then. Now, as you know, the Lower Decks is going on right now. Yeah. But yes, has nothing to do with us though. But this is the Starship locations, and we did have a mention. Some shout outs. Role-playing game dice, Starship. And their tiny little ship floating around. Smaller than Playmates figures, but that's pretty funny. That one episode. Last Thursday. You have, this is not that, though. This is just our own thing, fan film thing. I don't think that we need to overthink it. I think the different ships going around fighting each other. It's much cooler if they're smaller and not miles and miles long, and if they're and it makes more sense that the bad guys could do what they were doing if the ships weren't miles and miles long. They're smaller. So yeah, that's more intimate that way in the story. Yeah, so, unlike actually making it less epic than it actually was. Said that Star Wars is space fantasy. Star Trek is sci-fi or space opera. Space fantasy, space opera. This is space opera. I realize they've been on the same bridge set for a whole time, or at least a facsimile of their floating bridge set thing, because we can't really build a giant alien bridge that they're on. We didn't want to make it. I didn't want to film it like it was behind the scenes. I didn't want to film it like it was I didn't want to make a definitive layout and film the bridge layout and say this is what it looks like. And I'm not going to do that with the other two bridges either. Just show the command guys in their little stations and all that. I'm not going to show a distant shot of the crews on their ships because I want to leave these other ships vague until we get to the hero ship, the Endeavor, because until that happens, because these other the Nevada and the California are just they're there in the story. I think it's the California. Yeah, it's supposed to be the California. I'm assuming they're Starship looking ships. They look like Cali class, maybe the Nevada class one. Yeah, so or something. Yeah, so and it's 100 years after the events of Lower Decks, so so it could be anywhere in the universe. 70 years after the events of Legacy, roughly 70 years, 72, 73 years. And the planets, the other planets they're visiting are left vague, so it's not necessarily Alpha Centauri and Alpha Centauri B. It's not necessarily Delta Pavonis, Gamma Pavonis. It's stars that are similar light years mentioned, similar month out, similar distances, but they don't. Like in Deep Space Nine, they kind of just that's where it is. Or the classic Trek, that's where it is. So partly because we don't want a bunch of fans later on trying to figure out where everything is, because they don't need to. So more rumors, other stuff. It's just it's not production on that. It's our stuff. So they're confusing the two things, and they're not related at all. And of course, Vanguards is the other show. So the years things take place and all that is different, and it's even updated in this one as you go. We're not jumping generations ahead to get to the end of the story at the end of the millennium like in the original story. We're not really going to do that. This one is Cohnirri Space Story 1 and maybe Story 2 in terms of Part 1, Part 2. Yeah, Part 1, Story 1, Cohnirri Redemption, Parts 1 and 2. And then Star Crackers, or Space Vanguard, Sphere of Influence 1 and 2. But with that one's a little different because you have those 3.5 act stories, and not as many of them. And you could actually, the Sphere of Influence done as properly wouldn't be 40 minutes long, really. So it would be one of the half an hour segments in there. And then there'd be another one after that, the Kiwi Fiasco. And then there'd be another one after that, the Queen Fiasco. Those 3 stories would be in there. That would be season 1 of Star Crackers. But it's a smaller story with smaller scale, smaller. Pilot was an hour instead of 2 hours. The main episodes were half an hour long instead of, if that, 20 minutes long in that one. So that's different. This is Cohnirri Space. and we have to make sure that the aliens and the races and all of them have the same kind of dialogues and stuff. And it is funny that Havid is a Chekhov that's been painted up. Yeah, it's not a message there. It's just that's what it was. Yeah. Now the story, they say that later part doesn't need to be in there. It would have been problematic. It throws the story. You're like doing basically a bottle show at this point, and then suddenly we're on Earth, and we're suddenly meeting these guys and their grumpy father and their grumpy wife, and it's like, we don't need that. There's going to be another grumpy wife later. It's Cassin's. We're going to meet her later, so we don't need to do it twice. So yeah, in that case, that would be a scene that would be edited out later in post anyway, so we just won't film it. There was another scene in there that was not filmed too. There was another scene where Wex Kala is talking to one of his officers, one of the Dotol guys. That didn't need to be in there in this version either, just because why would he? Yeah, that little slice of life didn't need to be. It's not important that the buddy is talking to his officer before he calls him. That just throws off the pacing of the story. When you're making a novel into an adaptation into a story, you kind of have to do that. Otherwise, so that's kind of what you have to do. And yes, there's a lot of standing figures, talking heads, but there have to be because they're plastic. So this is not like, not like your average action picture where you have to have characters moving and doing things interesting and stuff. There they have no excuse. They have actors moving and they're animated. They're moving around. Whereas with a fan film with limited budget and limited movement, you can't do that. So it's all reliant on the voicing, the voices and the dialogue. It's motion copy. It's all on the voices and the dialogue. And if you get that off, then it throws it on. So that's time change. Yeah, it feels like it's an hour later. And tomorrow there will be more. Getting there, we're getting there. We're not behind. We're not on a schedule. So this gets out by Christmas. That's cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. So at the rate we were going, we started end of October, the 27th, 28th, and now it's November 4th, day before Election Day. So yeah, only subtly wearing the color. It doesn't say anything, just subtly wearing the color. Didn't say anything about it. So. You can say subtle. The movie doesn't go into that, of course. Doesn't go into that. Yeah. This is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster. And this is an update on the Cohnirri Space and Vanguard story. Mainly Cohnirri Space, because Vanguard's just a little bit down. Looking at the characters and voices and trying to put voices to the characters, so that when you go and do the story, you have a brief rundown of who's who, what's what, and what the voices are like. So I'm going to print this, and then you'll have a brief rundown. Okay, this is what they should sound like. Because in some of our other productions, you get a little bit of a weird thing. So other stories you get a little bit of a weird thing, and with Cohnirri Space especially, you have 34 characters that are just in 83 and some of them in the later one. And so we want to know what they are in the story, so that okay, these are the guys. That's who they are. Here's their voices. You don't need to know that here on the tape, though. But so some of these voices do kind of transfer over to the Vanguard one as well. You got your classic Kal Kat voices in there, MC Kim and Morton Roadkill, Clint Cowpoke kind of thing. Your classic sort of voices. They sound like a little bit of a Picard kind of voice, a Spock voice, that kind of thing. In this story, as a character in the Cohnirri space, in the other Skyfire and stuff like that. So try to keep it consistent. As for the later one, well, it's going to be consistent too. This one is more ambitious, but not really as long. Now that we're through the first third of the or what amounts to the phase 1, part 1 of the Cohnirri space one. It's noted that we can almost guess the length of the overall story. Almost, but there are 2 scenes cut out of the next act that really won't affect anything. Especially not after the recent changes to the timeline and other things. There's nothing current about modern anything in the story. Note again that Cohnirri Space was based on stories that were ancient, going back to the time of Pine Hill. So was Vanguard's was kind of the Cillian Space kind of thing, a little later. Then they swapped. The overall story presented in the 2483 and 2486 sagas appear to be inspired by the events of the late 90s, early 2000s administrations. So they're not connected to anything other than that. A lot late before that, late 90s, early 2000s. So anyway, nothing now, nothing current. But the story is future story, set in the future. So nothing current. It's not even a treatise on that, really. They're going to introduce a guy who's a flaky president, but there were a few of those, so it can't be the current one. It's got to be some other one from before, or some future one in the future. Yeah, so don't worry about it. That's not what the story's about. The story's about space aliens and critters and things and all that. It's not about politics in any way. No, not really. They're in space. They're on a future planet that vaguely resembles Earth. They're in a solar system that vaguely resembles that. They're going back and forth, and just that's what's going on. So that is just an update on the other thing. There was also a construction going on in the park. And so for the last couple of days, there's been construction going on in the park, vehicles moving around, beeping and going back and forth, and digging things up, ripping up the benches and replacing them and stuff. And it's been impossible to film anything with the thing going bleep, 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 zzz, bleep, 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 zzz, all the time. There wasn't any filming this week, really. Not much. Hopefully we'll get back to that, and maybe some... night shoots might be a little difficult in that there's not enough lighting in there for the way the shots are lit. Night shoots would be difficult. We'd have to throw in other lights in there, which I guess is kind of possible. But but not right now. So that's the update thing. So don't read anything into it. It's not. When you see this, I know as a making of sequence. It's just a space opera set in space forces thing, we thought of that long before a certain other guy did, long before, 25 years ago or more. The original story. Actually, if you go back even further, it was the 90s. It was like 30 years ago, like 94 or somewhere around there. I go back to the earliest version of this. This is what we've done so far is reminiscent of some of those comic book stories and going back and forth and doing that thing. They were motion comic. They were technically really, really crude motion comic. They were like, not crude as in dirty, but crude as in weird. There was hardly any. It was more like looking at a series of there was stories written down if you go back that far. But a lot of it was just pictures, and then there was a story associated with the picture. It wasn't even a comic book, really, technically. But yeah, the Star Trek figures play them in this. It's set about 70 years after the events of Legacy, but we can still do other Legacy stuff. Note that we can still do that. Those sets still exist. We can do that too. But we haven't come up with anything of that. We want to do this first. It looks like it's entirely possible that Story 1, Pilot 1 thing, originally being separated into two for different years that it took place. So 2383 and 2483 and 2486 could all be 1 year, and it could all be this big amorphous thing. It doesn't have to be. You can easily, in other words, you can condense the 7 or 8 episodes very easily down to 2 movies and just cover the whole first series right there, right, season, 2 movies, and then go on and do Vanguards. And I think that's what you probably want to do. You want to do that story and then stop there. Do Vanguards, which is kind of on a similar planet, or maybe it's the same one. Kind of different though. The places they go to are different. It's clearly a different planet, different time, a different place, different universe. Really, almost. And since Lower Decks is kind of doing that too. Yeah. If they met, they'd be from different parts of the universe, not necessarily different universes, and they're colonies of each other. Yeah. So the ship thing. That they didn't really, they hinted at that kind of stuff. They hinted at the Chimera, original Chimera. Well, not the original. The 2388 Chimera had been to the planet, almost 100 years ago. Had been to the planet, and they found it. So that has something to do with it, but that's not a central story or mystery they find out about. That just happens to be there, instead of the Voyager probe, which didn't make sense. Sort of a nod to Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which didn't make sense. And some of the aliens appear and immediately die in the story, which is kind of off camera, which is kind of strange. But they can certainly reappear as other aliens later on, because I don't think the particular audience is going to notice when a version of Mishax reappears as the guy on the other planet. Just happens to look like him. He's his twin brother. But yeah, we don't have a lot of aliens. So it's that old sci-fi trope thing. We don't have a lot of aliens. There are more than the Vanguard's one. There's twice as many as the Vanguard. But they have more of a ship-based story, doing more Star Trek, Space Cops type of thing. Before Space Cop, it was 2000, early pre-2000, 1990s. But yes, the Red Letter Media Space Cop would have been definitely part of that universe somewhere. He was on a planet somewhere. But yeah, that was later. Yeah, this is earlier. And there's the books came out in 2019 and 2020. They were later. They were later than Space Cop and the other one. But they were, but they were actually unpublished, but had created years earlier, many years earlier. These 2 series are very old, about 20 years, more than 30 years old technically. Starcrackers, the movie goes back to 1992. And up to 2015, but that was, and the other one, and we kind of skipped over the On Location anniversary too, but we did go to Pine Hill in September, so that was, or I did, so that was something. Anyway, so we have, and their consultants for both series are kind of on board, and some of them kind of aren't. It's all in flux and stuff. Yeah. Well, we're not going to do like some of the other fan stories, pretend and go like, they're totally there, and I just didn't want to be in it. Oh, it's not what happened. Anyway, so you're looking at the background of this newer story, which is an older story. So this is Kal Kat, the Kal Kat. What? Screw my own name. This is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster. This is a an update behind the scenes thing. You couldn't see much from that little bit that I showed you, but there are 15 set palettes, and all of them have designs on one side, and about 9 of them have designs on the back as well. And they're set palettes for any kind of environment. So you have different colors and shades. You have sort of goldenish Autobot ones and purplish Decepticon ones, and you have bluish Starcracker ones or Star Trek ones or whatever. And you have Cohnirri Space ones as well, with greens and browns and tans. You have outdoor and indoor faux sets. Everything because they were doing construction in the park. They still are. So it was kind of impossible to film last week. So so we did set making and painting, and so I did not spend over any budget at all. Some moving boxes, they were 50% off at the Staples. They were quite cheap. I think we spent maybe $25 on that, and probably $25 on the extra paint that we ended up not using, but we'd use it later. So we wanted to just make it not shades of gray and shades of gray green, especially when your characters are gray and gray green, and it was kind of causing issues with our early I mean, it works, but you can kind of tell that's why the gray one keeps getting thrown against a different backdrop. Is he literally matches the wall behind it, blends in. So I guess we'll have to have a little bit of the gray green just to establish what happened that changes it, or have them or just not explain it at all, and just they're in the finished bridge set, like the first 35 minutes probably of filming. There's probably less than that. It looks like there's 40 minutes, so that I don't think there really is. They were close up enough shots that you could gather that, okay, maybe they're in some part of the bridge that's different, that just makes them look like that, and they can still stick those panels in there to throw that off, and then say, oh, the panels are purple, maybe they'll change the lighting to orange or something. Ka-chunk, so we can see this guy. Because the next scene involves a couple of bridges talking to each other, and we don't want to make it look like the same bridge over and over again. So, well, why don't we spend the money to build? Not the money. So, go out and just get the sets, rebuild. Basically, the sets we had for the Transtech and Chimera thing years ago. Put those back together, all of them. Well, the ones we need, and for future ones as well. Also, concerning, that over there, the Transtech, possible other legacy episodes, actually legacy character, who has come up with a story, but so that'll be interesting. We'll see about that. That'll be later. So that should be interesting. Sort of like how the sports camp was inspired 3 episodes actually, and then a 4th one. There's quite a lot of them actually. This one episode took a trip the character took a trip down south, and it was a fiasco. Let's make an interesting story. If the events are changed. Anyway, but back to Cohnirri Space and all that. I'm sure it'll take a while to make a story. That story's not even written. Cohnirri Space sets, I think you could get away with just saying, oh, they turned around on the bridge to show the front of it. It's now purple here. It's not gray. Or the gray is over there in that wall, and they moved over. It's kind of gray, but no, it's blue gray. That's it. Or it's green gray. Um, yeah, there's environments for the planet as well. Backdrops: gray forest, brown forest, Martian surface as well. Awesome. So, neat. Cool. And anything else you want to make? Like, there are places you go in our series that usually go to a Mars-like, Wrath-like planet. You usually go to an Earth-like planet or jungle planet or something. Now you have sets that invoke a jungle planet, backdrops that invoke a jungle planet. Um, although Tim Cantrell was not here during any of this, his technique was recreated by the Kal Kat in the studio to make it look like that. His technique, because in the 1990s, in that art class, there was that stuck-up art lady that came in and thought our art was not up to par. It was the first day. So, little did they know that Tim Cantrell's designs just needed someone else who was a little better, more eye for art to take that, turn that into something. So he's basically the concept guy, and I would come along. Mark's cards said by his own admission says he doesn't know how to draw, but I do, and Tim kind of does. I said, your stuff is modern art. I just told her that it's modern art. Mine's more semi-realistic, but I can do modern art, and so I just did like some of the stuff we did for Trans Tech and all that. It's always art. So we were able to make it look artsy instead of just a guy throwing stuff onto a canvas. I mean, you consider there are artists that do that make money doing that. The infamous Jackson Pollock, for instance, who was an Eastern artist who literally would splatter paint onto a canvas. It's literally what he was doing, and he's a famous artist. He would go like with a paintbrush. Yeah. It wouldn't look like anything, but so if he was doing that, then all right, cool. Impressionistic modern art. You should have said it was impressionistic modern art with a industrial feel to it. If he said that, she would have went, oh, okay, and been humiliated. Industrialistic feel. Well, you know what? That impressionistic modern art, this future goofy thing, looks great. The background of a space story. Transformers, Trans-Tech, it was perfect there. As the Transformers would look post-industrialistic, weird, futuristic, giant robots put something together, it would probably look like that. Because they would be like, oh, I knew what he was doing. In the Cybertron set. He's making Iacon City, basically. Yeah, so there you go. Wrong with it. Yeah, they're very impressionistic. Also, all our stuff has the Tim flair on the background. You can tell it's inspired of Tim Cantrell. Very much so. Even this picture of the Starcracker people, the little break room thing. Yeah, so. And it didn't yet want to. I didn't really want to show bridge sets so you can tell it's a Star Trek-y bridge set, just because that's kind of what they do. I wanted to make Cohnirri Space and the other one be more randomized, so you kind of can't. Things are moving around. You kind of can't tell where everything really is. It makes it more ethereal and weird. They're sort of in a Jetsons world on the pole ship. That's this bear. That's like the SDF-1 or something. And so they're floating around. The bridge consoles and them are moving around. And, there's not a centralized location, which kind of makes sense, because then if they were attacked, they couldn't say target the bridge because they're somewhere inside the ship going. Kind of like that. Yeah, it's kind of a defense mechanism. Whereas the Brawn or the Vanguard is just a bridge on the top, kind of, semi on the top in the ship. Yeah, well, it's a little lower than Deck 1, because Clark came down the stairs from upstairs and went to the bridge. So he's going down to the bridge. It's not on the top of the ship. It's kind of just below the armor on the top of the ship. So his cabin is above the bridge. So if they shot at the ship, they'd be blowing up his cabin. Oh yes. Okay. Here is the cleaned up the set for the filmings, and moved some things around and put some things away so that we can have another set over there. And yeah, so here are some of the this cardboards that I mentioned earlier. Oh, these are cool. There's all kind. There's 15 of them, and some of them flip over and they switch over, and they can either be tops, walls, or bottoms, floors, corridors, whatever. Because your action figures, typically, you're going to stand. The camera's going to stand here. The action figure stands here. So you're never really going to go up that high. So that totally works. Yeah. So there. So that's the figures. So the sets here. You have these can be flipped and turned into the floors for the corridor. So we're floors for the corridor. Any ship you want. I took down the Chimera set pieces and put them away because it is very recognizable as the Chimera set, and yeah, that some of the stuff might throw off the other one, so we're gonna have to put some of those older ones back in the story on the bridge of the Cohnirri ship. So there's gonna be some of those other sets in the background, but it's gonna be evident that because the next couple scenes involve 3 different bridges talking to each other. So kind of had to set that up at some point, and they're still messing around in the park, so we couldn't do any filming. So yeah, this is the move that away, set that over there. So you have a say you want to use this floor over here. You want to establish, okay, I want this floor. I like this floor. It looks cool. So you want that, and you want to say, okay, I want a corridor, slight bend in it. I want to have our heroes standing in the corridor along the edge of the set, and then you take the corridor out, you wrap it around, and there. Yeah. Nice. Cool. So that's kind of what you do. So that's awesome. Or it can be a bridge or whatever. You want to set up the things around either side, flip things around. There's 15 of them to choose from. There's also planet sets, forest sets, Autobot and Decepticon sets, Mars sets. This is extraordinary. There's just so much of it. Yeah, now it is in full production on the set here, unlike the Orville Season 4. Yes. Ours is not clickbait. This is happening. This is the Cohnirri space behind the scenes. And any other else one. Yeah, so that's a little update. Okay. We're here on the set. Everything's rebuilt. And we're going to do a scene for the first time in 15 days. So, a little under 15 days. So here we are on the set of the California and the Nevada talking to each other. And we're going to shoot that. And very minimalistic set construction because we're only close-ups. So yeah, so that's what we're doing. Why is it? This is Kal Kat. The Kal Kats are on the set here of the production. We had lens flares in the background. Yes. Doesn't matter. Yeah. So we're gonna do some more filming today on Saturday here. A lot of filming. Finishing up the well, hopefully the 2483 footage. So the footage afterward that's supposed to be like 3 years later isn't going to be in the rewrites. It's going to be just months later because it makes more sense. Like, yeah. And we don't want to jump that far ahead. We don't want to do Dune here. We want to do Distant Cousins. So we have our characters. They're going to be talking to the Earth ship at last. It's interesting that you go about 40 minutes into the story that's done so far, and you get to, it's mostly the aliens, and then finally the humans show up. Some of them, it's sort of three caballeros type of guys and their father. Not racist though. They're just that's what they are. There just weren't very many ethnic characters in the original Cohnirri Space story when they were written, so I wrote these three elaborate, smart Colombian Latin American people in it. A businessman and a computer hacker and a other one. Even though they're not based on anybody, if anything, the computer guy is loosely based on one of my nephews, who's obviously white. And the other two, I'm not sure where I got them from. But yeah, it's like the three amigos or the three caballeros. They're basically comic relief, kind of. Which was a little off, but that's what they are. And so we have the ship thing and the spaceships and it's fine because it's not, they don't do anything offensive. They don't put on weird hats and start singing mariachi or anything like that. Nothing like that happens. They're just there. They're just, they're just people in the story. They happen to be people in the story. Like Chakotay was Latin American and he was in the story. And B'Elanna Torres was half Latin and she was in the story. In this, at Star Trek, they were just there. Doesn't matter that what they are, and their orientation or all that. They're just there. That's there. Their defining characteristic is not what race they are. The defining characteristic is what their personality is like. It's very Star Trek. So you have them talking to the aliens. Originally, San Akiri or San Perkak in the later one was supposed to be an Asian guy. But he is now sort of a Data. He looks like Data. Because it was a little weird and stereotypical that he was like all Zen and stuff originally, and he played up on that. That was a little weird. So I'm just going over the characters a little bit here. Orange Claw was originally Yun Sol, which is a Korean name, and I didn't know that. and had to change to Orange Claw, which makes him sound Native American. So that's cool. But yeah, so we have all doing yeah, and there's this one main older guy, the older Cervantes guy, who seems to be the Leo star from the other story, and then he's out of the story in a short minute, because his character is actually dying, and in the story in the context. So a lot of these characters walk out of the story, and then in the later part, we follow the young commander and his crew going to Orange Claw's planet. I was going to say Yun Sol, but Orange Claw's planet, and that's most of the other story. And it's not Dune. It's more like a jungle planet. So so there's so it's Hidden Valley. no, it's not. Kind of. So we have also the other Holt, who is the guy. I didn't know what he sounded like, so I made him sound German. He's Morton Holt. Harry Holt. So, sure. So let's film some more of this and see what happens. Okay, making of behind the scenes. At this point in the story, it's roughly page 68. So like in the Starcracker story, it's about 65, 66 minutes into the story. And then they jump to the next episode, which is 5 months later. That's next. They jump ahead a little bit to change some things. Originally, in the original OG story, you go back far enough, before the novella and all that, is even further. The Kayleen's journey takes place over several decades and they get to Earth when their descendants are on the planet, and the other stuff. It was decided during I believe the rewrites of the story coincided with Chimera in 2006, 2008, and then with the rewrites in 2015, 2016 for the books. At which point we decided, well, as far back as 2006, yeah, it's not 30 years, it's not even a dozen years, it's months, because otherwise you have to make it like an Asimov thing more so than a Dune thing. To make it like an Asimov thing and make everybody another generation further on, another generation further, why do that? So Mark Charles and Kal Kat, it changed in the timeline was like it's not a generation ship story, it isn't really, but that sort of DNA is there, present in that Distant Destinies special that it did with the crew there. There's also a nice nod there. If you look very closely at the dead crewmen from Distant Destinies, one of them appears to be Cervantes, the Cervantes guy. He's on the ship, which is interesting. And the other one looks like the Riker one, the other Cervantes. They're not, but they kind of look like him. And it's because the action figures with Shadow Dancer and the other guy. That's who they were. But here they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be the Cervantes brothers. So we have we have a jump ahead to a little bit in the story, just because, well, we had to jump ahead a little bit to get them where they're going. Originally, there was even, in an earlier draft, there was even a trip to another solar system where they go to Sagarum briefly and hang out with them and then come back. And there's like an incident with Meshax's brother and all that. And Meshax was cut out of this version of the story early on, so he wouldn't meet Meshax's brother. And that was all cut out before the story even became the novel. So Meshax actually continued on. And there was a whole backstory of that, and it got cut. It's not even in the novel, so it's not in the episode either. And usually, if it was a Hollywood production, you wouldn't do an adaptation of a novel. You wouldn't do that. Because, yeah, like with that other show as well. But here, something we wrote, we can do that because we wrote it, and we can just like make an adaptation of something we wrote. So it's all producer, director, star, everything, control the entire narrative, and just say, all right, this is what we're going to do. Also, feel free to make the barrister connection later on if you want, with that being Brister. I don't know if it should be though. I think it should be like the regenerated Spurs Coddle, the president guy, and that's who that is, and that's why the bad guys want him, because that's the guy, that's his clone or whatever, Brazilian clone, and if they kill him, then he's a different guy. And Meshax would also be recloned on the other planet, Sicilian space, right? But it's not established. It's just there. They're not aware of where they are. They're not aware they're in Sicilian space. They themselves, or at least they're not mentioning it, because it wasn't in the story originally. Because you don't need to worry about that. Just they're going to go and things are going to happen. It is the last scene we see of Gordon Cervantes, because his character is written out of the story at that point and dies. That's off camera, and that didn't happen. Maybe you can connect that to the other story, but then that would be awkward, and probably don't want to do that, because that would, yeah. So don't do that. This story does not take place when the generation ship gets there. It's a different story. It's probably even a different planet than this one, as it turns out. It just happens to be a Cohnirri ship that went there. With a similar crew of Cillian synths and stuff on board. We didn't need to get any new ones. We don't need to get any other figures. We need to do that. Just continue with what's going on. Then we're introduced, introduced to the characters who will be on the Endeavour ship coming up, and they are, and then it becomes more like a ship show, like a Star Trek, a ship show. Them taking the ship, going out and doing stuff. Having completed roughly in the script and the story wise a little over an hour. I don't think we actually have. I think it's shorter than that. They could easily, if this is near the last 30 pages of this section where it's in this time period, The next 30 pages is in 5 months later, but then the next after that a little more. And I don't know if they need to be in this version. You can kind of fudge that a little and say, like, oh, we're not really going to say what the year is here. Just keep going from there. No captain's log or anything. Because you kind of can, and you kind of shouldn't jump ahead again after that 30 pages. You shouldn't jump ahead again another couple of years. Why would you do that? Don't do that. So it's already changed from the novel. It's already going to be like, no, it's just a little while after that other story. Just a little while after, because it kind of has to be. You're not you're setting up. You're not beholden to that screenplay. I wrote it, so you can mess with it. And you kind of have to, because an audience watching this will be confused when it's like, oh, about an hour into the movie, it suddenly jumps ahead, and then half an hour after that jumps ahead. What's going on? Like why is that happening? So there's also a large scene that was cut out of the upcoming scenes involving the Slatons meet in an apartment, and it's not relevant to the story except that it mentions in the news media that they have kidnapped the ex-president guy in the story, having nothing to do with anything current. It was an old story from like going back to the 2006 rewrites. That's how far back it goes. So it would have been during. And it really isn't it's not a spoof of the Bush years, really. It isn't really. There's not. It isn't really that. It has a queen in it and stuff, and it's not even supposed to be Queen Elizabeth. It's just a queen, princess queen thing. And the way the Lettimock keep making new ones like every so often, it can't be. It's more like a spoof of the Borg Queen, except she's a bug queen. And the characters are she comes to the ship and arranges everything. So this is clearly the end of this chapter right here, or the come to the end of this episode, so to speak, with the Queen resolving everything and taking basically the villain out of the scene, so he's not there anymore. That kind of thing. The villain is a last minute villain, but because of the way the story is structured, he's the only one, so it's not like it's a last minute in the story. If you're watching the movie version, this is only 40 minutes, this is maybe 50 minutes into it, and there's probably another 50 minutes. So, yeah, it's not it's not a problem. There's probably going to be a lot of other cutscenes later on. But it is a lot like Planetcom 2007 from the books. Go back to the books and look at those. It's a little bit. It's like it in that it's slightly the dialogue and the quick movement and stuff is there. It's better written. It's clearly written more like a Star Trek than a BSG. It's not really Battlestar Galactica at all. It's probably inspired a little of New BSG because that was going on at the time, but it's what they're doing in it is not even remotely similar. Yeah, all the generation stuff is removed. It's going along. Because why would the story jump ahead so much? Let's just put them there where they are and have them go on. Also, it's kind of funny how in science fiction stories they have a crew of a ship from an Earth or something, and it represents the whole planet somehow. That kind of idea. And there's probably little reason that it needs to. You have a limited amount of creatures appearing before the commander and all that. So you have it works on multiple and it's working so far. Quickie aside on the set here, making of several days. The reason that this scene is in here and not the other scene in the city with the two humans is that this scene is pertinent to the rest of the story and that character. This scene had to be in there. This scene was the captain is fooling around with a subordinate, an underling there, That had to be in there because that's that character. That's what he's doing. Whereas the Slaytons, who were not introduced yet until later, their introduction doesn't make sense in the other scene. That's why that scene's not there. Because there's why have a scene where we're introduced to the wife and everything, and not really have her in the story until later anyway, if at all. So yeah, that just doesn't make sense to do that. It's not a juxtaposition to this scene at all. That's why this works better. That doesn't. This needs to be there. Idol is an important character later on, and yeah, so so that's what's going on, and that scene had to be in here. In other words, this scene is important to them. That character, his growth as a character. We got this started late. Real late. So it's a night shoot. Well, it's an evening shoot. So yeah, it's raining like crazy. So that masks out anything. There might be other noise in the background. But yeah, there's a couple of scenes that happen in the script that are weirdly present. And if we film the other scenes with some of the lines, there's an assassination attempt and a kidnapping attempt later on of some characters who happen to be leadership in the story, right? But everyone watching this now is going to think, oh, you're totally mocking the stuff that was going on in the news like months ago. No, this was a story from 2020. Which goes back to the origin story from 2000 and before 2000, the 90s. But they're going to think that it's current. So change some things. Don't have them mention it like that. Because they're just going to assume. The audience is going to assume, oh yeah, you're totally mocking that other thing that happened. Okay, quickie aside, we're done for the evening. That night shoot. Yeah, I went on the night shoot here, doing the thing. We are done with part 2. Done with part 2. We're just one chapter left in the 2383 segment, 2483 segment. And that's where they do the raid and go to the ship. They do the raid and the other thing happens. In terms of the story, it's probably the end of the first movie, at the end of the 3rd chapter of this. So we have minor set repairs to go on today. We're just testing the camera card, which is old, to make sure it's working. It seems to be. We have this here. I'm not sure if that actually is the bridge of the ship or the bridge of the other ship. We have various things over here, aliens and different choices. We're going to go into Act 3 tomorrow, and yeah. So these are some of the characters that are in Act 3. Yeah. So yeah, there isn't much time, so we're not going any more tonight. But it is turn on the lights to go over the script, go over the revisions. There's a scene typical of the silly trek in the beginning of a scene here where they show them going up to a shuttlecraft. They bicker with each other like something in a Strange New Worlds, even though this was written way before Strange New Worlds ever was, or even Discovery was a thing. But the book came out later, so they're gonna say, no, you totally ripped off Strange New Worlds. We didn't, but they'll think that. The banter was written in the book from 2004. Go back, it's in the book. There was a shuttlecraft arrival scene. Doesn't need to be in there. Just put everybody on the ship. Tom Castens and everybody on the ship. That'll be later. You may want to just not use the Klingon ship and use this as the pirate ship instead. Or maybe this is the pirate ship. You can change the walls. Changes to whatever you want, because we're no longer in that other set. You can adjust the script. I changed the scene where they refer to Barrister the Cillian as their president, because I thought somebody somewhere would complain in the comments. Oh, dare you endanger a president and imply that it's the president, and all that. It's like, I just changed it to world leader. World leader. Planetary leader, they found. They find him and they cack him. We don't know anything about him. They cack him immediately. The bad guys. Not these guys, the bad guys. And that's the end of the scene. And to prove how evil they are. So you have that. That didn't, I changed, the scene happens. It's just somebody else. You might want to change that because we grabbed it's supposed to be Barrister, who looks like kind of like a Chakotay, and Holt and the other guy are Chakotays as well, but they are done up in makeup to make them look gross, charred. Yeah, so I think it still works. Maybe he's part of the same rebellion. He's dressed up in the same outfit. Maybe they're Maquis people. Here's the Maquis person. You can barely see him. Here's the guy that gets killed. You might change that. You might just change that. Just for a gag. It's Here's the ships. For later on, the ships. Here is the Transformer, the Knight Rider Transformer Night Racer. Yeah, there she is. But it's called Night Racer. It's a male one in the story. So with this, we kind of have stories within stories going on. I know it was addressed in the other two previous ones. The trick was to get through the next 50 pages and put the and it's going to be less than 50. It's going to be like 42 roughly again. And if you put all the pieces together, you're going to end up with probably a 2-hour movie, not a 3-hour one. And the 2 hours thing it'll be the first half of the novel. The second half was originally 2486, but it's not going to be in this version. They're going to just reassign them in months instead of years onto their other mission, because there was a jump there of 5 months. We don't want to do that again in the story. Just to further along the story and make it work, you kind of need to do that. It is a little strange, a lot strange, that in the story, our main characters who we're introduced to are promoted by virtue of being there when bad guys take out their commanders. It seems to be happening with the alien guy, Cohnirri, and with Cassins and everyone else as well. In this story, it's sort of like it's like Lensman or something. It's not new BSG though. It's not really that. I was calling it that, but it isn't really. It's its own thing, really. It's a Star Trek Cillian thing, and if the planet is akin to Keptera, and the ship is akin to the Majestic and that bioship from that other episode, if there's some sort of connection, it's probably only a connection in that it's kind of like the Keptera and Draconis thing, but isn't really. And the ship is kind of like the other ship, but isn't really. Sort of like they took an idea and said, okay, we're going to run with this idea of this contact thing going on. It goes wrong in the terrorist attack, Deep Space Nine style. But it's not Deep Space Nine. It's in the style of. And then you have the story after this pilot. We put the pilot together and then make a story after this pilot about about something else that has nothing to do with either of the stories, and then go on and do the Starcrackers. So I'm not going to go into the other two. No. I'm just going to go into this because this is about this only. And it's too late already. It is after 7. It's too late already to do any filming. There was some damage to the set. There was bowing stretching everywhere, and it blew down the set. So you don't need to the minutia of the other ones. I think it does work. I'm hoping it does work. I'm hoping it's not going to be my version of Rebel Moon. Hopefully not. And it makes sense when it's done. But there was a lot of banter on the shuttlecraft scene, reminiscent of some of the other Silly Trek stories. And it's oddly out of place. It would have been fine in Starcrackers, but not in Cohnirri Space. I know the banter was added to make the characters seem more human, but really it doesn't work because it seems forced. It seems like they said, "Oh, we need to have a scene where they're in a shuttlecraft," because that's what they do on Star Trek and like Enterprise or something. They have them in a shuttlecraft. Yeah, no, you don't. You don't need that. So that can be cut out. You also don't need command officers on a spaceship talking back to each other and acting like children in a story where they're kind of supposed to be acting serious and they're suddenly acting like frat boys. It's just a little weird. The pacing, that idea is a little strange. So cut that out. That's not in there. Also, the part about the world leader who captured in the story could be reminiscent of stuff that happens in modern day, but is not. And so let's make it clear that it is not a reflection of anything current at all, and that it's just all the bad guys are bad guys, and they got a guy. Yeah, and so keep reiterating that for some reason. So that's pretty much it. You might want to maybe change some things around at the last minute. There's an awful lot of trapping and assassinations in the story anyways. It's kind of dark that way. They don't show everything's off camera. That happens. It's definitely different. It's done in the vignette style, like the Blessing Deferred was, but as a sci-fi story, and that makes it different than the other ones, and makes it have issues with it, pacing. It does work though. It's fine. It works. If there was dialogue and moments that didn't work, I'd just cut them out. Not film that part. That should be good enough. We've already burned through a couple of characters from the main cast that just off screen they died. But yeah, it's still not a generation story in that respect, and I don't think that if you ever did go to book 2, that you need to make it further in the future that much. I wouldn't, even though it throws off where the fleets would be and all that. Well, that would add more tension if it's not a whole fleet. If just a few people and the bad guy. The bad guy's motivation, the Letamok's motivation is not stealing resources. The motivation is just being bullies, basically. So because aliens come from across the stars, they're not going to be after our resources or people or slaves. That's silly. They would just be doing it for kicks, basically. And one of them in this version is a Borg in this version of the story. Wasn't in the original script. Made him a Borg in this one, an ex-Borg, former Borg, because why wouldn't they have cyborgs as well in their fleet? Also, it ties into Star Trek a little better. It is a Starship Locations to use the story, so and actually the weird premise of having to introduce characters that are dispatched at the end of a chapter or something, and running out of characters, and with 30 to choose from and running out of characters, which is an interesting dilemma in the story. So that's why they've just thrown in some regular Star Trek Playmates people and said, no, that guy's that guy. Just because you kind of have to do that. There aren't enough. Which is interesting. Not sure how we're going to do the Star Trek one, the Vanguard one. But we shall see. We don't want to just pull out the people from Legacy, for instance, and throw them in there and not explain it. because it'll really be like, those are the guys from Legacy. So it's got to be other action figures. It has this weird dilemma. It's like we have hundreds of them but can't use them. Kind of thing. Yeah. So, yeah. So it is the 25th of November. On the set, we are continuing with filming the evening night shoot. And we're starting off into this section where we have deleted about a good 5 pages? 5 pages. Because we don't need banter with the characters. It adds nothing to the story. There's no banter. So let us do this. Making of. We're not showing where they are standing or what their juxtaposition is. So they are looking at Cassins, who is where the camera is. That's why she's facing that way. Because he is supposedly where I am, the camera is. And he's facing them. So he's standing right here. Yeah. It works. He walked up to them. Cool. Yes. On the set here. Teas and things. Do we have? Yeah, I'll put this in the fridge, I guess. We'll put them in the fridge. Okay. So, yes. So we were on this. This is the. Started late. About an hour and a half ago. It is now 8 something. 8. It's just about right. Almost 8. Doesn't matter. On the 25th of November. I should be able to knock this out before Thanksgiving. We'll have principal photography wrapped on the pilot for Cohnirri Space, which is the 2483 segment, which is about the first third of the book. The second 2/3 are the 2386 part. It's about the first third, really, not the first half. But if you pared down some of the scenes that are kind of fluff that are in there to set up what happens to Alan Slayton afterward, if you cut most of that out because you don't need it, then, because you don't really need it, it would be the second. We finished one half, and then there'd be the second half. It'd be 2 halves, and put them together, make like roughly 2.5 hour movie. And so you have, and that would be fine. Perfectly acceptable pilot and then movie feature film version of Cohnirri Space. Book 1. Book 1 done. This is thus a lot of book 1 done. It's either a third of it or it's half of it, depending on how you edit the second half. So you have, the Cervantes brothers. I think I mentioned earlier in some of the making of what they are. Conglomerate versions of David and his friend from school. Back in the day, the nephew, and his friend. His friend died. He was killed by bad guys. Hernandez. And they included his characters in there. I thought that would be cool. But the... and it's not a reference to the Gordon character at all. That wasn't his name. It was something else. But we won't go into that. It was somebody who was killed. It was Paul, I think. Anyway, so yeah, it was somebody from the San Jose State era. From the 90s. And the characters are supposed to be versions of David, the hacker, or whatever. And all of our personas. He wasn't really a hacker. It's just that we were just being silly. So the different, or there's the businessman nephew was the other nephew, and then there was the other nephew was the hyperactive one, Antonio was the other nephew. So there's different nephews here in this story, basically. Different versions of them. But they flipped 2 of them, and because K.O. Dan from the Transtech ended up being more like a business person, and more like the other guy, the other brother, and David ended up being more like the hacker guy, and the recluse kind of guy. Actually, more like the Antonio character. So they mixed them up, and Johnny, the other nephew, was more like recluse, but in a different way, not really a rebel, sort of like Antonio. So the characters are modeled after, vaguely modeled after, and cross-pollinated after relatives, and occasionally other people from the cast. They're not Mexican at all. It's a coincidence that Big Tim from school married a Mexican lady as a child. It's a coincidence they don't know about the Cervantes brothers. I think they might know about it if they've read the stories by Plant Common as well. But they probably didn't pay attention. And there's nothing bad or stereotypical about them. They're just what they are. In fact, technically, in the story, they're Colombians. They're Colombian like guys in the story. They're not Mexican. They're from South America. So anyway, but yeah, they're Colombians in the story. No, my nephews are not Colombians. Probably a nod to post-Cold War Colombians being cartels and stuff. It could be offensive, except in the story, they're clearly not in a cartel. It's clearly that they're like legit, like business people in the story. So they're legit. So anyway, they're not selling drugs or anything, or running contraband or anything. They're actually just, they're kind of like Orion pirates in that they're trying not to run contraband. They're kind of like that. They're a little bit piratey. Narr. But then we meet the bad guy pirates in tomorrow's episode. So you have, this episode where we meet Alex Everett. Alex Everett is named for David Everett, who was a Murphy School kid from my 6th grade class, so many years ago. And David Everett, who was kind of like Mike Van Dam from later in the other series, but in this one, he's this one. No nonsense type of character and script. There were scenes in this story that were problematic in the first 20 pages that we just shot 20 pages. But actually, we shot 12 pages because we cut out quite a lot of that 20 pages that was like redundant scenes where the crew were meeting and kind of going over information they already had gone. The book probably could have stood a few rewrites here and there as we go through the script version, going like, does this really work? But yeah, we can't do anything about the book now. And obviously we're not rewriting the book to be reselling it. No, we're not doing that. This is a script version. And obviously there are, when you do an adaptation of a work that was a storybook, you have to change some things to make it makes sense as a storybook. Sometimes you read dialogue and go like, wait a minute, did this guy say these things if he was a person and a human being in a story? That's what Mark Cars was on about during the early editing of the story years ago. We fixed a lot of it, but yeah, as a storybook, you'd probably want the banter, and the little playful sort of thing with the Bentons, and the other playful thing in the shuttle, or the other playful thing that was cut out. You want Beth Cassins being snarky, that type of thing over and over again. But really, if they're on a ship and they're forwarding the story and they've arrived in the shuttle bay or something, you don't need to have that, especially if the captain walks up to address them. Why the captain wouldn't suddenly decide to let them be snarky, nor would he be snarky. He's only a little snarky with the admiral because he knows the admiral from before, and they're friends. And it's in space, so you figure their ranks are a little looser than they would be. The only thing that throws him off is bringing the civilian Cervantes brothers on the ship, on the bridge, saying like, "What? That's not protocol." And there are a few ad-lib lines that I thought sounded better as I read them, and said, throw in a word here, a word there that makes it sound more like two people are talking and having a conversation. The tone, the intonation that you don't get from reading lines where like somebody's sarcastic about people on the bridge. But when you actually read the lines as with the script, you kind of have to, punch it a little bit. He's going to be a little bit miffed that civilians on his bridge. It's just funny. And we meet the pirates. The pirates do bad things, and then they try to screw up the mission. They try to attack the ship. The But the ship is not very big. There was a scene that was cut from we just didn't read it. It was in the story where they mentioned how big the ship is, and I thought that I shouldn't include that. I should leave that vague because I want to make the Endeavor seem a little bigger, but I want to make the Kaleen, the alien ship, seem a little smaller than it was, just because it kind of makes the tension a little better. So yeah, the Kaleen was originally in the script 180 meters long, which is quite small. Making it closer to 280 meters, or a little bit like the Enterprise classic trek, makes more sense. Make it a little bigger than that, then it looks more impressive. It does more interesting things. It also makes it closer to the size of the other spaceship, Vanguard ship from the other story. So yeah. Yeah, euphemistically, they are called the Kalinsky class, but that's just because in honor of Uncle Bill, that they're not really called that. But yes, late Uncle Bill, who designed wooden ship models. So that's how I'm doing them too. Yeah. Yeah, so it's pretty much a given that so far that this is in post-production for the pilot. If we can get it into post-production, we put it together in December and release it before Christmas. Have a pilot, yay! And then, strangely enough, do another episode of Legacy instead of doing Starcrackers next. This one Legacy. Well, it's sort of a Brian Fuller idea, with them going to a planet where it is actually the previous century, 80 years earlier than 2407 or 2408. It's the 2320s, so we get to see what's going on in this spaceship that goes to the 2320s with a wraparound story. That's a different story, though. We will see what their because of Amanda Rumblige's comment story that coming together. So, so yeah, the legacy has not stopped. There's legacy stuff too, which is kind of interesting. Doing that too. This is the draconian thing, the Keptera thing, the other thing are not necessarily related, but kind of are. It appears that in the story you have the LaForge people, the Far-Outians. Well, they're LaForge action figures, but they're Far-Outians if they have visors, right? So they're from far out. So if Michael Slayton in the story and Alan Slayton are Far-Outians, then they're probably related to those Keptera people, which is kind of cool. They probably are. They're related to them. Yeah, the robot ones are synths. Well, they're related to the other ones. Yeah, so yeah, the Picard ones are related to the Draconians with a little bit. Yeah, so there you go. And yeah, the Draconians are related to the Letamok and the Lithians. So it's all connected. It's all silly Trek coming back to get them 80 years after the adventures of Legacy. So there's like different versions of stories, different timelines going on, convergent and whatever, and divergent, and which is cool because you're basically starting off with different series, discrete other series, and doing what Fuller wanted to do years ago with Discovery. Originally, the Fuller idea was he was going to do an anthology where each 10-episode season was a different part of the era of the Lost Era. But then they decided to do something else. So yeah. Okay, brief making of. That was the pirate scene, well, so far. The next scene, we have Cassins and Beth and them heading to the alien ship. We meet the aliens. Yeah, it almost would be a continuity error that you included Cassins in the last scene. However, it could be a few minutes later, and they could have gone out to a ship, to like a shuttle pod. In the story, it says something to the effect of they docked the ship with the alien ship and went in the shuttle bay and all that anyway. So it could be that this is 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, whatever, and they've gone to the ship. It's not a continuity error if that's the case. So it isn't really. He could have moved it because they stopped the threat rather abruptly. Yeah, their bluff is very Starcrackersy. But yeah, their plan is kind of surreal. But yeah, there's humor in this. It's not BSG. It's not dark and sardonic. It's definitely Star Trek like. Of course, you could make the assumption that new BSG was Ron Moore from DS9, so it was more Star Trek like on that BSG. So yeah, this is not that at all, really. Just that there's some similarities with some of these other shows with alien empires and Cat-3 civilizations and societies living on planets. Some sci-fi tropes. I would say this is nothing like those. There's a vague similarity, but no, there's nothing like. It's not BSG at all. It's much more fun than new BSG. Yeah, and it's much more fun than Dune, actually. It flies fast and loose with the ancient alien stuff. It's more fun than that, though, too. Okay, then. Making up. Second unit stuff. Page 136. I'll take out the line about how tall they are, because that's kind of silly. And other than that, just keep going. Starting with Sand's line about the member races. And go from there. And then, yeah. I'll make it up. So yeah, this is second unit footage. And so what I want to do with this next scene is because we did back and forth with the space screen before. I think it's punchier, like the story ahead, if we put the Commander Everett and Cassins and Owen on the bridge of the Kayleen instead of over a view screen. It's just better that way. It's like, okay, a few minutes have passed, whatever. It also conveniently sets up the next scene where the prisoners have escaped and they're using the captured ship and all that. And then they kill the other guy. But yeah, it sets that up. So better if they're all of the command officers went to the mothership, the alien ship, and they're all hanging out there. It just works better visually. As an interesting scene, they're all there, and that's why the other one ends up getting trapped, because he's not with them. He's down in the cargo bay with the prisoners. Well, he doesn't realize he's with the prisoners, but he is. So yeah, that makes more sense. So do that. This is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and this is the last making of the, believe it or not, of the 2483 segment. Roughly the first half of Cohnirri Space, the novel, done as a pilot for a series. This is the pilot, and it is officially done. We cranked out 44 pages today. Just ran right through, just all the way through, just do the last fourth. Let's do the last third of the thing, or 3 episodes, 3 50-minute episodes. Yeah, so, but just really got it done. So here we are, and yeah, and up to the exciting space adventure thing. We did end up filming the last scene with the David Cassins, but making it slightly more Dune-like, Dune remake-like, in that they haven't gone to kind of in the book. They jump ahead 6 more months and they go to the planet, and the Queen dresses them at the planet. I thought that was a little jarring. If they spend the last 4 minutes like completely elsewhere just to tie it into the next one, which may or may not be done. I don't know. Well, we're going to see this one first. We'll see through this one. This is the pilot. Let's see what happens. And then we'll see what happens after that. And yeah, there's no time limit. So yeah, if this gets out before Christmas, cool. But yeah, so you have it is not yet the end of November. It's certainly possible. It has taken a long time. It was a long road getting it for 30 years. Sorry. Just trying to get through each individual scene. It's been a slog through all of October and most of November. Trying to have like, yeah, this is the. There was actually free space for the last. There were hiatuses. There were people roaming around. There was people doing construction. But then that ceased, and then it started raining, and there were other things going on. It was, that just getting the thing done. And today there's the opportunity to get a lot of it done, and so it did. There were a few things that were changed from the book because they look better. They looked better the way they were shot. There were things that were changed back. There were other things. There were the attack scene and all that didn't really play out the same as in the book. The Slayton getting killed scene didn't play out the same as the book either. And when you get to the next half, it becomes more of a Tom Cassins and crew go on a space mission to a planet deal in the next one. So it's different. Also, they keep flashing back to Earth and Everett's people fixing up the Space Forces. We don't need any of that, really. And Prakac helping them. We really don't need any of that. That would make it considerably shorter if you took that and just said, no, Cassins and his crew are up to, and we're just going to hang out with them. And then go back home. And that's when the Purvis story starts, which is really the next Dotal story. The story does have a habit of having villains who come and go, and are killed and come and go, killed and come and go. It does that. We kind of ran out of some figures, even though we painted up a bunch of other ones before. Tended to, even though it was weird because you had like 40 different figures, but you only really could use a small amount of them doing different things, and that was it. And once you used them, they were out. You have various characters coming in and out in the story. You have of that. Earlier on, I made comparisons of the story to more legendary space books such as Asimov and Foundation, or the Dune with Herbert, or Ron Moore's Galactica, or Robotech or Star Blazers. But really, this is kind of its own thing. Once it was all together, it was like it's kind of its own thing. It's another sci-fi epic thing, and yeah, it's a little bit Expanse-like, but the Expanse is basically cribbing from the 2004 book, so they're borrowing. Now they have their own books. They really do. They're probably borrowing more from David Weber, which is another author from years ago. Probably borrowing more from him than my stuff. Certainly, they hadn't read my. It would be unlikely, very, very, very unlikely, slim chance that they read my stuff. It's just a coincidence. The Star Trek kind of story. I did slightly alter the ending piece where the Queen introduces herself and stuff because they're less bugs and they're more draconian Orions. So they're like Lithian draconian Orions. So they're less that. They're still bugs, but they're not. They're very more humanoid than bug-like, basically. Draconian Orions. They imply that the Vanguard's universe is parallel to theirs on another part of the galaxy, that their events are happening in a similar way, and slightly further on, as a joke. Also, the Cohnirri ship, the Majestic mentioned in the story, is not the Cohnirri ship from the episode. It's a different bioship. It's a different generation ship. But it's interesting that they kind of imply there are other ones, and they're all colonists and other ships, and there's other Cassinses even. That would be one of them from that other ship, that other vessel that we don't know about. The bioship, the generation ship, goes back to Discovery, mentioning the generation ship that that Gray and Tal are on. Yes. Which they really didn't do justice to either of those characters. Yeah, it has.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi story pilot thing. It's not anything like BSG. The only remote thing that makes it like that, like I pointed out in the other making of today, is Ronald D. Moore worked on Star Trek: The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. In the writing contest, we were also on Next Gen Deep Space Nine. So it's like that. So Galactica's only like Star Trek because it's the guy that worked on it. That's the only similarity. There really aren't any that even remotely similar. They have sort of a matriarchy. They've got like a queen, like a spoof of Britain, kind of. They have world leader guys that are taken and killed and stuff. Originally in the draft, it was supposed to be Barrister or Brister, supposed to be Henry from Silly Trek. It was supposed to be a nod to the killing off of Henry and replacing him with Mike Van Dam from final season. He said he moved to Nebraska. Well, now he's back, but he moved to Nebraska. He's actually back, like recently, but we haven't met with him yet. But yeah, the Mike Van Dam is now long gone. So you have although his character Mikey Madmav appeared, played by somebody else. Yeah. But yes, we have Everson this time. We changed it to Everson. So if it's the Everson, it's not now. Matthews is the one that destroyed ships. Everson, there's an Everson and a Matthews. So there was a previous Everson and Matthews that destroyed the original Chimera, or allegedly destroyed it. But the Litkra have the Chimera, so they've found it, and apparently put it back together. That's interesting. Well, that was originally supposed to be the Voyager probe, which made no sense. The idea being, okay, it's like Star Trek: The Motion Picture and across the galaxy. That made no sense. And that was going to be the Starship Voyager, and that would have made even less sense. So I said, what if it's the Chimera? What if the Chimera? And what if Everson somehow was able to use his Cillian powers to take the ship intact into this other realm and save it? And he's out there somewhere. He's one of the leaders on the planet. So they find him, and the bad guys kill him, apparently. So, yeah. But we don't know the particulars of what happened in that story, and probably will never know what exactly happened to the ship. Just like we'll never know what happened to the Enterprise E. The Worf accidentally blew it up for some reason. You have, your story, set up your story. It's all a very interesting twist story. It's a remake of that Planetcom thing from 2007. Really, it's a remake of that. The alien queen, the bad guys, the different groups doing things, which is a similar parallel to that Distant Destinies story from the Starship locations. We've already done it once before. But actually, if you look at that story, it actually takes place after all of this, not before, which is why that ship is not here. It's before. But then they mention possibility that time travel was involved, because the guy says 6,000 years ago we were taken from the Earth. So, yeah. But maybe, yeah. So he's a Cillian. He had Cillian powers. Everson, who was Mr. Everson on the Enterprise E in Starship Chimera, gets killed in this story. Well, you know what happens to Cillians when they get killed? They get regenerated somewhere else. So, I wonder if the rest of them are Cillians. Who knows? I wonder if even they are Cillians within themselves, because you've got Everett, who kind of looks almost exactly like that other guy, the Gordon Cervantes. They look the same. You've got Everson, but you've got Char, who looks like Everson, but old and fried and crispy and stuff. I wonder if maybe the crispy version cloned the younger version somehow, or the Cillian universe revived him as the younger version. The Cillian universe is messing with him, which would be interesting. And aliens, and that was actually the wrong guy playing Silarap there, because he doesn't say his name. So technically, you could just say, "Oh, that's another Gray." It's not that it isn't as interesting. It's that it's not. It's more Star Trek like, so it's not as not as big a body count. There's not as many people getting killed off. And you just know the bad guy villains are going to be let go at some point. You just know they're going to escape. But yeah. Books. It's not that they're not as good. It's that they're stranger and weirder, kind of like how Dune got weirder as it went along. It's not like Dune, but kind of in the sense that it got weirder as it went along. We hardly ever go to any desert planets in our stories. There's no spice worms or anything. There are, however, space lesbian bug ladies. So that is similar.